So Amanda, from Huntercombe Prison, you went to Wormwood Scrubs. Was that a huge change and difference for you going from the young offenders to the male prison?
It was just a massive, massive change, but hugely exciting. That was 2009, and oh, it was just so exciting. I mean, to be in this incredible old building which was heaving with history and drama and noise, and it was strangely exciting. Yeah, it was great. And of course, I don't know how many prisons there were in Huntercombe at the time, but to go to Wormwood Scrubbers, which I think is between 1,300 and 1,400 prisoners, I mean, massive place, was, yeah, it was great. I loved it.
And was your role different there in terms of what you did on a day-to-day basis?
Um, in as much as usually I signed up to do what they call the duty doctor, because in the Scrubs there were quite a few doctors working at the same time. So there'd be a GP working on each wing doing a GP clinic, or the job would be duty doctor role, which usually I chose to do. And so duty doctor would mean seeing patients in the first night centre that had arrived the night before, doing the segregation rounds to check people in the seg, on call for any drama that happened anywhere in the prison, which was heart in mouth and exciting times, sometimes quite distressing times. But no, it was great. So normally I did duty doctor role, and it was a long day. I used to get there very early actually to miss the traffic, but have a little kip before I started in my sleeping bag, and then start at 9 o'clock, and the day finished at 10 o'clock at night. So it was a long old day.
Were you surprised yourself at how you adapted? Because certainly from what you said, and then also reading the books, that the scenes that you were witness to, they seem to just like exponentially get more unusual. Seems like a very and not kind of sufficient word for just how out of the ordinary and like tragic some of the scenes that you had to deal with were.
Yes, they were. Particularly the one that I suppose I'll never ever forget is the young man who slit his throat. I mean, I to this day don't know how he survived that, and I will never forget walking into that cell and seeing that blood just was everywhere, and a young man was sort of dying in front of us, really. And thank heaven there was a wonderful young doctor who'd already started to try and resuscitate and help sort him out. But it was, yeah, hugely dramatic stuff. And the chappie who had boiled sugar water thrown all over him because people found out that he was a paedophile, and the burns and the distress and the shock was to see somebody in that situation was something, of course, I'd never seen before. But it just added another dimension to my life, I suppose, and my job.
Yeah.
And what's the process of getting paramedics and ambulance staff actually onto the wings? Because I know from visiting prisons it takes ages to get from the front gate to the visiting wing.
Exactly. Difficult, yeah, and incredibly stressful when you're the one trying to hold somebody together. Physically, literally trying to hold this young man, hold him together. And it felt like forever until they arrived. But obviously they came as quick as they were allowed to get there. And he survived. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
So I've never made a visit to a prison, and I've certainly never been to Wormwood Scrubs. But so just like the physicality of how do paramedics get? Because you describe the cells as being so tiny as well.
Yes.
So they're just
it's very difficult
manoeuvring in this minute space.
Absolutely.
And then stretching somebody up.
Yeah. I mean, the narrow metal staircases and the tiny cells, and so very, very difficult. And I don't envy the ambulance people either, but obviously to get through the gates and to be allowed through security and into the prison and all that, I wasn't really involved with that bit of it. But I just always felt so thankful when they arrived,
when they got there. Yeah.
Because how do you get through the prison? Do you have to go through with an officer?
Well, to start off with, if you're new to working in a prison, then anybody new would be escorted around the prison. But once working in a prison for a length of time, everybody that wants to draw keys has key training. And once you've done your key training, then I could draw my own keys and walk around the prison unescorted, which is fine.
Some responsibility, isn't it, having keys to the whole prison?
The healthcare keys didn't have cell keys on them. So, for example, I couldn't open a cell on my own. I'd need an officer to open a cell door for me. So the healthcare keys were slightly different from the prison keys. And of course, my crikey, when you go home, you have to leave the keys there. I used to think, in my early stupid naive days, I used to think that everyone went home with a set of keys, but no, that would be that would be a major problem.
Imagine having to change locks.
Oh gosh, yes, yes. I think it has happened.
Really?
God knows how now though, because they're all, they're in key cabinets, so you couldn't possibly do that now. But yeah.
Are they still physical keys?
Yes.
It's not right. Okay.
Yeah. Big old keys they are jangling around.
I'm imagining a time when it'll all be kind of like retina scans or something to let people through. But no.
Well, once you get through, so how it works at the moment at Bronzefield is you arrive at the gatehouse, the sliding door opens, go into the airlock, sliding door, and then I have to press on a biometric to get through into that bit of the prison. And then once I'm in the, if you like, more the admin's prison, so part of the prison, I go to the key cabinets, put my finger on the biometric, door pings open, and I've got a few seconds to get some keys out, shut the door again, and if I don't do it within the time, it makes the most awful, huge alarm noise.
It's really interesting to hear, because when I go to Bronzefield, I see the other side. So we're going to the...
You've been to Bronzefield?
I have, yes.
Hey.
Yeah, so all I see is we go into the general visitors side,
Okay.
Go through the metal detector, and there's an airlock door into one section, and then social visits go straight ahead, and we turn right, and there's just some small rooms there, again with biometric scanning.
You've got many clients there at the moment?
I thought you were going to say you've got many relatives there.
In the past, yes. In the past, I've had lots of clients at Bronzefield.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of them have crossed both of our paths.
Yeah.
Whilst in Scrubs, were drugs an issue?
Oh, huge issue. Huge. They are in every prison. They are in every prison. And I just despair, really. And I think they always will be in every prison. I just can't I still can't get my head around the fact that they're so available.
And I'm sure it makes your job very difficult, because if someone's suffering the side effects of drugs, they're not going to want to tell you they've taken drugs because it's a disciplinary offence. So how do you deal with that, not knowing that someone's actually taken drugs?
Well, it's very, very difficult. I could bore you rigid with some stories, but it's just so dangerous and so worrying. And with the female prison, of course, women can't be examined internally when they come into prison, so they can pop them wherever they want to. And we soon get to know when there's a big batch of spice out there on the wing, or patients are collapsing or very drowsy or not responding properly, and or their observations don't make sense, because if somebody's, for example, withdrawing from heroin, for example, usually their blood pressure and pulse would go up, but if they've also used spice and they're not telling us they use spice, that can sometimes have the opposite effect. So you're thinking, what the hell is going on? The person's begging for methadone or something. You think, actually, no, I can't give you that. It's not safe.
Yeah.
And that happened to me with a girl once, and she was so ill. And I saw her...
so she was both withdrawing from heroin and she'd taken...
She was withdrawing from an awful lot of drugs, and she was feeling absolutely terrible. So somehow they managed to get her over to see me, and as soon as she got into my room, she just lay on the couch, sort of in the fetal position, and she was just begging me to give her some methadone. But her pulse was so low, it was dangerous, and I couldn't make sense of it. And I knew she'd be angry when I said I can't give you any methadone, but I actually looked at her and I said, I actually had to send her into hospital. She was so ill. And at the time I said, have you used anything else? You've got to tell me. And she said, no, I just need methadone. And anyway, she went to hospital. And when she came out of hospital, she came to see me and thanked me very much, because she said, I couldn't tell you at the time, but actually I had been using so much spice. And that's why I was in a bad way. And I've never forgotten that, because if we hadn't been careful, we could have, she might not have survived. But she didn't want to tell me at the time, but afterwards she actually admitted it and thanked me, and I think, And
is spice the main issue in drug-wise in the prison
Not necessarily.
system?
It's one of many. It's very prevalent, and they, of course, they're trying to clamp down on it. But I don't know. I think prisons will always be one step ahead of people trying to clamp down on it.
For those of our listeners that might not know what spice is, can you explain that?
Well, it's a synthetic cannabinoid, if that's how you say it. So it's a synthetic drug that apparently, when it first came out, was a legal high, and then of course people soon realised that actually it was hugely addictive and very, very dangerous. And so it's a type of cannabis, but it's man-made, and so apparently and I'm not an expert by any means, but I see the effects of it, but I don't know. But I have read that sometimes, the people that are bulking it up might put rat poison in it and all sorts of stuff. So you never know quite what they're really inhaling when they use their spice.
I've read about heavy metals being cut with it as well.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, and the effects can vary hugely. Sometimes people just feel quite pleasant. Other times they can literally start having seizures and it can kill them.
I have wondered whether it is so popular in prisons because it's something that you can get into prisons so easily, in inverted commas. I read that you can, for example, dip paper in it. Have you had any experience of that, or do you? I mean, I don't know if that's something that you're even witness to, or you just see the ramifications of it.
I just see the ramifications, but I have heard that it can be sprayed onto paper. And apparently before the prison got sort of wise to it, prisons were getting letters sent from home with spice sprayed all over them, which they would then cut up and sell their spice. And I forget, a prison did once tell me how much they were getting for a very small bit of paper with spice sprayed on it. It was a lot of money. So it was very easy to get into prisons through the letters. But now I believe all the letters are photocopied and the prison's given the copy rather than the original. So, but yes, that was early on a way it was ever. And there was a time in Wormwood Scrubs when it was everywhere. I mean, it was, in fact, that was really and truly why I left the Scrubs in the end, because I thought sooner or later someone is going to die in here because of spice. And the way the prison system works is any death in custody is a coroner's case, and coroner's courts, I think, are the most unpleasant experiences of my life. Well, one of them, whatever. And I just thought, I can't do that again. I can't be made to feel like I've killed somebody by neglect because they've actually died of spice. And that's why I left the Scrubs after 7 years, and I loved it there. And
you've spoken about spice being sold by prisoners. How does the prison stop prisoners selling prescription drugs?
They don't. I don't know. I actually really don't know the answer to that one. I don't know how prisoners access money when they're in prison. I know they have their accounts and people outside can put money into their account, but quite how the prisoner can then access that money or how it works, I don't know, because I don't think they can physically have money. I mean, so I don't know how it works. It could be that families outside earn the money for the prisons inside, but I couldn't really answer that. But I know certainly that the women in prison will trade, for example, their vapes for drugs, or sometimes they'll sell clothes. They'll give clothes in exchange for drugs, and sometimes prisons have come to me and said, I've sold all my clothes and I've got no clothes left but now I'm addicted to these drugs. Can you help me? And and
if you prescribe a substitute, so methadone, to prisoners, how do you monitor that's going to the right prisoner rather than them trading it on?
Well, theoretically, of course, I have to be very, very careful that you're talking to. Now it's a phone call. Make sure I'm talking to the right prisoner by checking their date of birth and prison number before we carry on. And occasionally, if I hadn't asked that question, the wrong person would be answering the phone, and that could be obviously very dangerous. But anyway, so I prescribe their methadone. They have to go every day to the nurses to get their methadone in their little cup, and the nurses have to then watch them drink an amount of water afterwards to make sure that methadone is actually swallowed. I have known prisoners in Wormwood Scrubs, I mean, it's an awful thought, but I've sometimes heard of prisoners regurgitating back their methadone and selling it. Can you imagine how ghastly that is? But I have also heard of the women in prison having a Tampax in their mouth to soak up some of the methadone so they can sell that later. And it never ceases to amaze me what they'll do, unless they're watched very, very carefully. Some might try and secrete it or not swallow it and spit it out and sell it. So it's tricky.
And how do you phone the inmates?
Well, in Bronzefield, every prisoner has a phone in their cell, and I have a list of phone numbers for each cell, and there's a specific phone that I use. It's not a normal, obviously, outside phone. So this phone connects, I put in my PIN number, I dial their number first, hash, and then my PIN number, and that gets me through to their room.